Good morning. We are waiting for people to enter the room, and then we will get started in just a minute. So glad you could join us today. Okay, that's great. It looks like the room has stopped filling up. So I'm going to go ahead and be respectful of everybody's time and get started right at 10 o'clock. I see the chat box starting to open up, so that is great. I'm glad y'all know how to use the chat box. I want to welcome you to the Florida Friendly Landscaping Professional Webinar Series. Today's webinar is the Integrated Pest Management, the importance of landscape practices. Sorry about that. I want to let you know your microphone's been muted, so please put your questions in the chat box and we'll take them at the end of the presentation. Also, if you feel like it, you could let us know what pests or what challenges you're having in your landscape right now, and we would love to try to address those later on at the end of the webinar. This has been approved for 1 CEU from FFLCP, LIAF, FDAX, LF, LCLM, LLO, CLO, DBPR, Landscape Architecture CEUs, and FNGLA CEUs. There is a $15 charge to receive a CEU certificate, and I'll put that link in the chat box to make the payment if you haven't already done so. Otherwise, that we offer these webinars as a free educational service. We won't submit the CEUs until either Thursday or Friday, so you can expect your CEU certificate Friday for sure. But we like to give people a day or two to register if they didn't do that beforehand. And then this is part of a monthly webinar series held on the second Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m. The next webinar we're going to have is July 9th, and it's creating show-stopping landscapes and having success with bedding plants. And that's with Debbie Mola. And also, one final thing, you will see a survey invitation pop up. At the end of this webinar, please take a moment to fill this out. We really would appreciate that. It helps determine what kind of programming we're going to offer and how well we're meeting your needs. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Tom Wickman to introduce today's speaker.
Thank you, Claire, so much. I'm so excited to introduce our speaker today. Today, you're going to hear from Faith Oy. She's an extension professor and director of the Pest Management University, an academy that provides state-of-the-art education and hands-on training for the industry. She works at a grassroots level and does applied research to solve industry problems. She has published more than 250 extension, refereed, and technical journal articles. She's led the development of 10-day, multi-day curricula in structural pest management and has given more than 350 presentations. She offers a graduate seminar titled Issues in Pest Management. She received her PhD from the University of Florida and her MS and BA degrees from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. With that, Faith, I'm so excited you're here today addressing this audience, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. So I saw some questions in the chat that I'm just going to take care of right now. So the lubber grasshoppers have been really bad this year. And I'm really sorry to tell you that insecticides at this stage of the game, they're not going to work. So good old mechanical control. My neighbor across the street has just been smashing them. The second thing that I saw come up was ticks. And we can chat a little bit about that, but generally ticks are associated with a host. And if they're in your yard, you're going to kind of want to do desiccation. And that goes to how fast you're, how low you're mowing. So that's going to be one thing. The other thing is to exclude the wildlife from your yard. So I see moles. I'm not an expert in that. Generally, they're eating something in your lawn. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Palm weevil, I don't have a good answer for that one. That's very tough. So I'm going to go ahead and start talking about integrated pest management. Did I just advance that? There we go. Here's our overview. We're going to talk about pests. that start in the landscape and can become indoor pests. And then I'm going to talk about integrated pest management, the what and the how. And then I have some case studies lined up, but I always tell our audiences that my slides are a suggestion. I don't feel obligated to get through the entire deck. So we're here to answer questions as much as possible. So here we go. So this is the survival triangle, right? And it's simplistic, but it's effective. It's an effective view of pest management. If we eliminate food, water, or harborage, we decrease the probability of survival for just about anything, right? Not just pests. So does anybody have any guesses as to which one turns out to be more important for, I'm going to give you an example of cockroaches. Does anybody, you guys can put things in the chat there if you want to. So water, okay, I see water. Anybody else? Food, water, that's really good. You know what was really surprising to me? It turns out to be harborage. So Maria, if I had prizes, you would get that. The harborage creates a microenvironment that really encourages their survival. So I'm going to talk a lot about sanitation today as well. So water and food definitely, but harborage turns out to be quite important for the cockroaches we deal with. Here are some of the common pests that start outdoors and then can become indoor pests. So we have outdoor cockroaches, like those big hairy domestic, people call them palmetto bugs. We have things like pill bugs or isopods. I don't really consider them pests, but you can see here a variety. Millipedes. Has anybody had the attack of the millipedes, the invasion of the millipedes? You can put that in the chat too. Okay, yes. So for this one, dethatching your lawn is probably going to be the most important thing. We have also centipedes, earwigs, and flies as occasional invaders. So I'm gonna kind of go on here. I'm not sure, Angela, what tailfish is. So other pests that start outdoors include ants. And we have some ants that are going to be just pests, right? Nuisance, but they're going to be nuisance pests in really big quantities. So this is going to be the picture that you see on the far right upper corner is the tawny crazy ant. And then we have the fire ants as well. And then mosquitoes. I'm going to talk a little bit about mosquitoes right now because, part of mosquitoes, the mosquito feeding cycle, it's not only on us. Males will feed on nectaring plants. So the plants that you choose in your landscape maybe could have an impact on mosquitoes' survival. Oh, mosquitoes in your dog's water bowl. You need to splash that out. That's an easy solution right there. So I put this other ant up here. So if you can see fire ants up top, I know everybody likes that green glowing lawn, but we also have pyramid ants. And sometimes I hear from my pest control folks that everybody wants all the ants to disappear for their lawn. But nature hates a void. So if we get rid of these pyramid ants, they're also biological control against fire ants. And that's going to be really important for us to not get rid of all the ants because the most invasive species is going to return. Okay, Angela, I see you, silverfish. So remind me when we get a little bit further along in this presentation about that silverfish. I'm taking notes here. I'm trying not to forget this stuff. You see this door here? If you're standing on the inside of your house and or building, and you can see light coming through those doors, all of those pests that we talked about before can come through. So the easy integrated pest management solution is going to be to fix the gap in the door. So this gap that's vertical here, that's the astrogal. The bottom part here, easily fixed with putting on door sweeps or making sure your door thresholds are really tight. So I'm jumping into this concept of integrated pest management because pest control in the state of Florida is not just about pesticides, right? So if you have a quarter's width of gap in your structure, just about any of those pests that we showed early on will be able to enter. So we want to fix that. So yes, Amy, exclusion. That's fantastic. So exclusion is also important for us in Florida because if you have if you see gaps like this, you're losing your air conditioning, your air conditioned air out that as well. So exclusion, having a tight seal in your building is also really good for energy as well, energy conservation. What about sliding doors? That's a little tougher. I'm not sure exactly. It depends on the type of sliding door that you have, but do as tight a seal as you can on that. So some of the common pests that start outdoors, I'm going to talk about this later on in our presentation because we are ground zero for the most invasive species for termites as well, subterranean termites. And this is one that is really structurally damaging to us. So we want to make sure that we're not doing landscape practices that encourage the infestation of pests that are going to damage our structures. So see this? You're going to see this slide again. So this is pretty impressive damage. So this is how subterranean termites can survive and come in. And take a look at this. I'm going to talk about how a blind, soft-bodied insect can enter structures and become a pest. So anybody guess as to what pest we're talking about here? Okay, you're going to see this picture again too, okay? So just keep this in mind, and it's going to be related to landscape and harborage there. So integrated pest management is about problem solving. I keep telling folks that it's a process, it's not a miracle. So some people think that, oh, I'm going to get pest control in, or I'm going to do pest control in the state of Florida. It's not a once and done in the state of Florida. So integrated pest management is not just the application of pesticides or the absence of pesticides. It's the organization of a program that's designed to prevent pests, inspect and monitor for pests, identify pests, devise and control a management strategy, implement that control or management strategy. And then this is where we fall down. It's the evaluation part. So this is the what IPM is. What I want to talk about now is the how we're going to do IPM. So again, IPM is a process. It's not a miracle. We have to analyze the pest problem. And so analyzing the pest problem is going to require us to have some kind of background on biology and behavior of pests, understand the environment that these pests are living in. So then we can take some short-term corrective actions. And I'm going to be honest, sometimes that short-term does include pesticides. So things like stinging insects, like fire ants, we might not want to start with the non-chemical options. You might want to start with a bait. That is a pesticide, but it's also very effective and it's environmentally friendly. But then we want to look at implementing long-term preventive actions, which is usually going to be our exclusion, and then document and evaluate the results. Follow up with the customer or yourself at this point. So I'm going to talk about now a little bit of what this entails here. So this is the language. If you're a professional on this meeting, right, a landscape professional, sometimes we talk about IPM in terms that are very jargony, and our consumers might not understand it, or our customers, it might not resonate with them, not that they don't understand it. So I have worked with our family, youth, and community sciences agents, and this is just a slide of what they found resonates with the average homeowner. So instead of saying that IPM is a problem-solving process, blah, 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 they just want to know, are you going to take care of my pest problem? So we might just say our pest management service is a problem-solving process. And it's a program that's designed to stop pests, and then the inspection and monitoring is there, identify, and then have a game plan to protect your home. And this term game plan seems to resonate a lot with consumers. And then we have to give them a heads up that we may need their cooperation on some of this. So this is the game plan, behavioral modification. And this is the most difficult part of integrated pest management. It's identifying that behavior that caused the problem in the first place and then changing that behavior. So I always use bed bugs as an example here. Most people do not have bed bugs in their home. And when they do get bed bugs, they're shocked. They want to know, how did this insect get here? It doesn't have wings. It doesn't transmit any disease, but it's really unsettling to have a blood-sucking insect in your house. Usually it's because somebody has brought it in because of travel. So we need to identify those kinds of behaviors. Where did you go? How long ago was it? So that we can prevent that behavior from that infestation from happening again. And the way we prevent that infestation is by doing inspections, right? So sanitation is another game plan item. It's easier said than done. So we talk about sanitation, harborage removal, simplifying the environment, or habitat modification. Depending on what pest we're dealing with, these things can be harder or less hard to do. Exclusion, of course, we mentioned that in the beginning. Pest removal using snap traps. HEPA vacuums are very good, and other physical modifications. So in the state of Florida, our humidity can be 90 to 100 out there, and the pests love it. So if we decrease our humidity in our homes by running our AC or having an AC that's appropriate size for the structure that you're in, we can really decrease the probability of survival of some pests that come into our space. And I'm going to have that example of carpenter ant later on. Biocontrol, we don't use that very much, but it's completely viable for us. And judicious use of pesticides. We found bed bugs inside the bingo hall. That's why okay, there you go. So you found the source of the infestation. And Dawn, I'd love to chat a little bit later about how we can break that cycle there, about how the community can keep prevent them from taking them home. So investigate the problem. We want to begin by interviewing the customer or interviewing the person of interest, clientele, and we can't assume that the customer or that person has identified the problem correctly. We are notoriously bad at pest ID. And that's not, I mean, that's just everybody, because there, when you just talk about insects, there are 2 million of them out there. And it's really going to be, it's almost impossible, even for entomologists, to be able to site ID 2 million insects there. So we want to make sure and use the resources around us. So FFL is great. We have county extension offices that are connected to campus where we have identification services there. We want to also determine whether there is in fact a problem. So this one here, the kitchen was spotless in this case, and they couldn't figure out where these nymphs were coming from. And so using all of your senses, I think some of you, probably all of you know what German cockroach smells like. I used my sense of smell. It was like I was the canine sniffing, dog there. And I found German cockroaches in an electrical panel. And this is a lot of, these are a lot of Othiki. So we did determine that they're in fact a pest problem. Yes. So Evan, we're going to talk about conduits and pipes a little bit later on in the program and how they get into structures, but very important point there. So inspections, we want them to be thorough, and we want to help ensure that the problem is correctly identified. So this is one of our RECs. I'm so sad. I've watched this plant decline over the last, over the year, since the beginning of the year. What is going on here? So we need to scout, right? We need to make sure that we're doing a thorough inspection, and then we use our findings to make recommendations for prevention and control. Inspections will also be done, or should be done on a regular basis as part of monitoring. And then if it's possible, we take the client or the customer to point out areas of pest conducive conditions. So I'm going to talk about conducive conditions as we get further along into the presentation, because conducive conditions are things that we do to our built environment to make it habitable for pests. It's like, why would this pest leave if it's so comfortable for them? And sometimes when we make the area comfortable for us, we're also making it comfortable for the pests. And then it's really important to communicate our findings back to the consumer or to the client. So here's some inspection tips. We want to inspect systematically and be consistent. Okay, so do you start by inspecting counterclockwise or clockwise? You want to pick one and think in 3D. We tend to think in 2D, especially if you're doing a map. And so the 3D is going to be really important because the pests are going to be moving in a 3D space, but you have to know what to look for. So when we do training for professional pest control, we put our training of what to look for in these categories of evidence, damage, and live, and conducive conditions. So let me show you what the entomology department looks like. So this is us watering our walls. Now these shrubs are cut back quite a bit right now, but sometimes those sprinkler heads get misdirected. Sometimes even with this kind of maintenance, we are supposed to have monthly maintenance, but we are still watering our walls and there's algae growing on the front. This is a conducive condition for all kinds of pests. Let me see, Wendy and Alexis, Atala butterfly caterpillars eat Kunti. Yes, that's true. But the backside of this plant also had scales on it. So I suspect the decline was related to the scales. Going back to the slide. So I really encourage IPM practitioners to use all their senses, and we tend to focus on the visual and the accessible aspects of inspection, but smelling, hearing, touching, and probing can provide additional information. I do not advise that you taste things in your pest inspection. That opens up a whole host of other issues there. Invest in a good flashlight. That's going to be really helpful, and you can get them for like $9.99, maybe, I mean, under 20 bucks right now. The lumens are really cheap, and then learn how to use it. So if you have a flashlight and you roll it down a wall, that beam at an angle will cast a shadow and make things on the wall that might be, oh, see, maybe you have the Southern Living distressed look on your wall and there's moisture behind it. You might be able to see some of those imperfections in the wall. I have also used flashlights on pantry shelves, because if you have a mite problem or a stored products problem, if you roll that flashlight in the pantry, it's going to be, it'll magnify those really tiny pests that we get as stored products as well. Then document. So if you're a professional, you want to write legibly. Some companies use electronic forms, and you want to make sure that those boxes are filled out correctly. You also want to have an internal system of quality assurance to review the documentation to make sure that your company's protocols are being followed. So this is just part of the inspection process. They're all intertwined, right? Having the documentation and the QA parts. So do you know what to look for? So here's my partner in crime. This is Paul Matola. He just recently retired from DAX. We went into a school kitchen. So I do a lot of schools because that's the other program that I have is school IPM. And we actually saw, I don't know if you guys can see that. That's a German cockroach on the scale, the head of the scale, that they used to weigh flour that morning for the school lunches, baked goods that went out. And so he just took that scale head off and took his flashlight and shot it down there. And that beam of light revealed some very unsettling details about the level of infestation that this kitchen had. So flashlight, very helpful, but knowing where to look. So Paul knew, I smell something. I know that they live in tight and hidden spaces. So he was able to take apart pieces of equipment where he knew German cockroaches might be. So this is going to require knowledge of pest biology or knowledge of how to diagnose how pests are entering. And then we have to be able to explain it to our customers or clientele, which is communication. And that's a separate skill set altogether. So I'm going to go do the rodent case study right now. Is everybody okay? Are you guys still doing all right? Okay. So here's my rodent case study. So here's some of the reasons that we want to control rodents. It's not just disease, right? It's contamination. And so some stats, if just to incentivize us to make sure that we're keeping the rodents out of our living space. So mice can produce between 40 and 100 droppings per day and thousands of micro droplets of urine per day in their travels. Rats are going to be 20 to 50 droppings per day, and they excrete about a half ounce of urine per day. And this urine fluoresces. So if you have a UV light and you have a rodent problem, some of this, the urine especially, it's just going to light up. You'll be able to see very easily where they are. So this is just a map of common rodent entry areas and harborage locations. So they can come in just about anywhere. You can see a whole bunch of things here, but I'm going to focus here on the plantings and what we do on the landscape side of things. So here's the home range of rodents. So mice, 30 feet maybe. Oh, Evan, you are totally right. Hearing, vision, taste, touch, and smell. Yep. So rats, 450 feet is their home range. And they figured that out using DNA. So they know where these families' homes are. So when we talk about IPM and we say, hey, all you have to do is find the source of the infestation, this is one of those pests where sometimes it's easier said than done, right? Because their home range can be very large. The rat, especially the roof rat, is designed to live with us. And it has its entire body is amazing how they are able to exploit our living conditions. So if you look at the tail, just the tail, right? They can swing. It helps them go from place to place. They have abilities where they can jump and balance, and it helps them exploit a wider range of foods and nesting sites and travel routes there. So you see these, if you see this kind of stuff, these markings, that's where the rat has used its tail to swing from beam to beam and get around. And they also have muscle memory. They use trees, they use power lines, they use our fences. And so sometimes schools, again, right? My other program is we don't get around to cutting branches and things away from buildings in schools, and then we end up with a rodent problem inside. So some of these palms that we end up planting also drop fruit, and that becomes a food source for these rodents. And once they get inside a school, it becomes really difficult. So rodent senses, right? They're really good with taste, highly developed. They have highly developed hearing as well. Oh, maybe we go back here. I put this picture in because it's mango season. So if the rodents are eating mango, they're gonna those babies are also gonna like mango. So they have really a keen sense of olfaction, and they use this sense of smell to locate pathways and territories. They use pheromonal cues to mark burrow entrances and trailways and paths. They're not likely to be repelled with human scent since they live with us. They're commensal with us. So here is New York City famously has a rat problem. Yeah, Caesar, squirrels are just rats with fuzzy tails, right? So here's a rat with a Miller Lite beer can. And if y'all are interested later on today, you can go and search Pizza Rat on YouTube. They're amazing. Pizza Rat is really famous. Because it's just a rat hauling a piece of pizza down the New York subway stairs there. So I'm going to give you some biology right now, in addition to the vision and whatnot that we had talked about earlier. Well, you know what? Their vision is not bad, okay? So no, their vision is actually not good. They have good sense of olfaction, taste, right? And they're also really good about gnawing. So rodent means to gnaw. And on a Mohs scale of hardness, the rat's incisors measure 5.5, which is really hard. It can exert about 6,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. The Mohs scale of hardness for iron is 4, so it's less. And the reason that I'm showing you this is we use some really not good materials to exclude rodents from our house or our structures. The New York City subway is a house of rodents. I agree. So, oh, let me see. And I just lost my, how do I, there we go. There we go. So rats and mice are capable swimmers, right? So giving you a little bit more information here. So you can also get on YouTube, and I think it was Nat Geo. They put together a video on how rats come through the sewer system. And so they have a cross section of a toilet, and you can watch a rat go up a toilet. So that's kind of cool. And so Norway rats can swim almost a mile, maybe a little bit more, and mice about a half mile. They also burrow really well. So understanding a rodent burrow is going to be really important in control. So active burrows are going to look like this. They have smooth, well-worn appearance at the entrance. And to confirm if that burrow is still active, you can collapse it and recheck it the next day. So unfortunately, we see stuff like this, right, at schools. So this is a very active rodent infestation here. I don't know who thought it was a good idea to put a bowl on that rat trap. That rodent monitor is not real good either. Does anybody else see anything here that might be related to rodents besides the improperly placed monitor there? Okay, Jonathan, grease, right? So this is from the sebum, the sebaceous glands on your on the rodent body there. So when it goes in and out and it's created that trail, it's using its senses to go back and forth into the structure. Why a rain gutter? It's digging underneath the slab, and this particular rodent infestation, they actually went down the gutter, went underneath the slab, and came up in the kitchen because the slab was cracked. These rats don't need very much space to get into places. So check this out. I gave you a different angle here of landscape material. This is just planted too close. And so when we plant things, especially these kinds of palms, and Tom, you're going to have to bail me out at some point because I'm a bad plant ID person about what this particular plant is. But when you see bracts like this on the palms, it is also harborage for other things besides rodents. So cockroaches can live in there, ants can live in there, all kinds of other vermin. And then it's planted too close to the structure on top of that. Cabbage palm, thank you, Catherine. That's just a close-up of what the grease marks look like when rats are in the area. And then they get into the structure. And if you pop these ceiling tiles, then you get to see all these different kinds of droppings. Not good. So remember this picture? People who are really good with rats, they know that that's a rat trail running back and forth between what? They're hiding in all those shrubs there. So rodents really like shadows. And we're going to have to know their behavior if we're going to be successful in control. Okay. So they like shadows. My home away from home is at Emmerich. I think they do a really good job on the landscaping, but every time I see this, it makes me cringe a little bit because this is excellent harborage for rodents to hide in. There's shadows everywhere. They're hiding, they could be hiding underneath those shrubs. So which one is going to be better for rodent prevention here? The magnolia. So that's the vase shape that we want to see, right? More, not as much shade underneath. That other one, and again, Tom, I'm so bad with plants. I should know that plant by now. It looks really pretty and it looks like they did a good job taking care of it. But look at all that harborage underneath there. So the vase shape for landscape plantings, especially if you have an existing rodent problem, is really important. So rodent control, eliminate harborage, right? They're going to love places like this. Sanitation is important. Part of the issue that New York City has is that the practice until this year has been to take garbage out in garbage bags and throw it out on the sidewalk until the trash pickup occurs. And all a mouse or a rat needs is about a half ounce a day. And so there's plenty, right? There's plenty of food there. We want to see sealed garbage cans like you see on the right hand side there. I put this here because they can get through some pretty tough stuff. So the quality of the plastic or the material that you use to either exclude rodents or even in the trash cans, they have the big bellies if you go down to Orlando and Apopka, where it's really metal, mostly metal. That's going to be important if you have a rodent problem. Yeah, somebody tried really hard to exclude rats in their attic by using maybe, I mean, something that was hard, right? So that was license plate. When the rat didn't go through the license plate, but the rest of the soffit was made of softer material. So they were able to chew right through there. If you're going to take the time to get on the roof of a building to exclude rats, you want to do it right the first time. So this is a picture of one of our schools that had a rodent problem. They thought they figured out where the rats were coming in, and they were holding the hardware cloth in place with foam. If you have a pest that is exerting 6,000 pounds per square inch with its bite, do you think that foam's going to keep them out? Not really, okay? And I kid you not, we found this as exclusion for a rat problem. Duct tape is not a good choice. I like duct tape, but it is not going to keep rats out of a classroom or any other space for that matter. So we really want to use something like hardware cloth, and it has to be of a certain grade and a certain mesh size. I see you're laughing, Heather. This is an example of how we use hardware cloth to exclude animals out of spaces. And you need leather gloves for this kind of work. So that's my spiel on rats, y'all. And I'm going to transition us over to ants right now. So I hope some of you have some questions about ants here. So we know that we have about 12,000 species of ants, probably 20,000, probably more, right, by now. But only a handful are going to be pest ants, and most of them are a nuisance. So we have a few that are medically important, like the fire ants. Oop. But I'm going to talk to you today about carpenter ants because I'm going to talk to you about Faith's awesome carpenter ant adventures. So we have a couple of species of carpenter ants in the state of Florida. My husband's an entomologist too. And so one year he said, you know what? These carpenter ants, they're getting to be quite a bit. Do you think we need something to do? Do you think we need to do something about them? And at the same time, we're talking about doing structural pruning on the trees around our house because you just have to do that every few years, every couple of years in Florida. We were trying to prepare for hurricane season. So we did the structural pruning. And I think what we did was we disturbed their habitat. So I go one day, I'm getting ready to take out the weekly trash, and I see this. And I'm like, oh, this is so cool. It's like a mini colony of carpenter ants underneath that trash can. Okay. So even my husband was like, oh, yeah, this is neat. But even the ant guy is saying, don't you think we need to do something about this? So I put the trash can back down because I wanted to see what was going to happen. And so I went back in the next day and I picked up that trash can, and this is what I saw. So there are a couple of things, right, going on here. We run our air, AC, and I think that it might have not been humid enough for the carpenter ants. They came inside, they couldn't get out real well, and so I just left it. And so we have another invasive species on our property. It's the big-headed ant. And so I was like, oh, let me see what's going to happen. And the big-headed ant took out the brood, and they were also starting to haul the carcasses away of the carpenter ants. So if I had just swept up those carpenter ants that died in the bathroom, I probably wouldn't have had the big-headed ants come in. But I tell you all this to say that sanitation, right, cleaning up is going to be really important for us. Keeping the humidity down is also part of integrated pest management because outside pests that come from the outside typically don't want to be in that dry environment. They love the humidity that we have in Florida. So take-home messages. Carpenter ant control is really not that easy, but they also don't live well on the inside in our air-conditioned homes. So sweeping and vacuum are good options. Cutting trees and shrubs from our homes to decrease access into our homes is going to be key. So we're seeing a pattern, right? Keeping our trees and shrubs away from our homes. It works for rats, it works for ants, and it's going to work for termites too, because that's the next pest that I'm going to talk about. Sanitation is key to ant management. So Amy, yes, carpenter ants will feed on termites. And in fact, termites, they're my baby. They're like my favorite insect. And you can put the smallest ant in to an arena with termites and the termites will lose because they're soft-bodied insects. So just to finish up on the carpenter ants here, they prefer to nest in moist wood. So the carpenter ants that we have in Florida are generally not structurally destructive. If you go to the Pacific Northwest or the Northeast, they have a different species of carpenter ant and they can be structurally destructive. But for us, they can get into frames, door frames, and windowsills that have wood decay and hollow doors. They like those structural voids. Okay, how to keep ants out of garden beds. That's really good, Darren. I would recommend, and are you talking about like fire ants, Darren? So you can go ahead and put tiny ones. Okay, let me pause on that one. And Tom, can we come back to this question when I'm done on the ants?
Certainly.
So,
I'll gladly remind you of that.
okay, so because that one's going to take a little bit of time. So the IPM take home on this one, okay, on this house. Look at this house. Isn't it gorgeous? Landscape is beautiful. They clearly spent a lot of time on turf, right? But to see this holly, that prickly holly that's going all the way around the house there, Okay, that landscaping is way too close to the outside foundation wall. And we need to allow our PMPs, our pest control folks, allow them enough time for inspection, because these kinds of things can be an impediment to doing a really good inspection. So I'm going to show you a slide that's like, oh, you see that? It is never good when the attorney calls you up and goes, Faith, you got to drive out and see this. It's amazing. So the house from the outside looked great, and these homeowners wanted to do renovations. So they started at the doorway. So that's going to be this doorway here. They were going to take off the trim. And by the time they were done, they found termites in every single room, including the interior, not just the outside rooms. So something had clearly gone wrong here with the termites. And part of my heartburn was having those kinds of plants put up too close to the outside foundation wall. It's very difficult to inspect. It's difficult to treat. And we create a highway for these termites to get in. So termites are cryptobiotic. They can be hard to spot. So I don't know if you guys can even see my arrow here, but they're following the termite mud tubes. So termites are blind, soft-bodied insects, right? And the ones that we have in the state of Florida, the colonies can be from, I don't know, just a few thousand to millions of them, because we have several invasive species in the state of Florida. And this tree has a mud tube wedged in between the bark. And termites can infest trees, but also if you look really carefully, you might be able to see the tubing here on the brick wall. And termites will use these guidelines because they're blind, soft-bodied insects, right? So here's what happens. The reason that I don't like termites plantings too close to structures is because the picture on the right, on the left-hand side, that is termites in a arena that we put together without any kind of guideline for it. And they tend to evenly divide a foraging area. Eventually, they're going to find that wood because they're really good at finding it. The picture in the middle here, this is what happens when we have a guideline. So again, termites are blind, soft-bodied insects. If they can minimize the amount of work that it takes to get them from one place to another, like from a central nest to food, for example, they're going to follow that guideline. And this is what happens when we have pipes. That's why when your termite guy comes to do treatments, they have critical areas, and they're going to pay special attention to those areas, and they're often related to pipes. But when we put landscape plantings in that have roots that are really hard, like azaleas, which are so popular, and that really pokey holly that people like as landscape around structures, they will follow that into a structure as well. Trees are devastating, for a structure. They will follow that in, no problem. And here's the other thing we do. So then we put mulch on top of everything else. So this is y'all our training house down in Apopka. And we kind of want this house to be infested, so we weren't too upset that this mouse was left out there for a long time. But this is not a practice that most people want, because the moisture is going to keep the moisture is going to be a conducive condition. So moisture is the root of all evil for infestations. And then check this out. So I do the parade of homes every year, right, in Gainesville. And if you have mulch that's pushed up against the house, we even have ants that can use that mulch to get into structures there. So conducive conditions, right? We have beautiful homes coming up in Gainesville right now and throughout the state, because our population is quite high. And if you have this faux rock on the outside, which is very pretty. And then you put mulch over the slab. And then you have irrigation that is way too close to the house, even according to the building code. You're going to have a problem with termites. So this green thing here, that's a Centricon station. It's a bait station for termites. We have a couple of bait stations out there that are quite effective. What we really want is to see that inspection space. It's much more preferred to have that so we can see when something is coming into the structure. So this has great curb appeal, right? I love this, the look of this house here. But who does this? This is the wall, and this is 6 inches, and then they put some little green planting here. I don't know, Tom. I think you need to go help these guys with the landscape architecture part of things. And then there's a sidewalk. So the pest control company knew that this was going to be a conducive condition, and they put a bait right in there. But I don't see the purpose of having 6 inches of soil with mulch over it right up next to the house. This one was even more interesting. So hibiscus, which my friend Jim Davis, some of you may know him from Sumter County, he said hibiscus are pest magnets. Now I'm from Hawaii. I love the look of a hibiscus, but I can't argue about that being a pest magnet. And then you have water being diverted in an inefficient way. So you guys remember this? How did these termites get in here? The termites actually made it up the tree, crossed over the branch, and came in from the roof. So when they cut that branch down, then the termite access was taken away. And we do this kind of stuff all the time, where we give these pests access into our homes because of the way that we build things. So this on the left-hand side used to be the entomology building. We actually built a berm up against the side of the wall, and they've taken it down now, but we were wondering why we had a problem. That branch sitting on top of the roof of a cabin, one of our 4-H cabins, that's how the termites got in there as well. And then we moved them around with landscape ties and whatnot that we use to create our landscape. So all of these things, right, are part of that planning to prevent pests. We want to avoid moving pests around. Easy things like cutting branches away from our structure. It's a really good IPM technique. How about this? I've seen this. So they're thinking that they're xeriscaping, right? Is this termite proofing because it's gravel and not organic? They're hiring landscape companies. So this gravel is actually considered a conducive condition for termites because now the termites don't even have to haul the sand or the soil particles 4 or 5 at a time. They're just walking through the gravel. So we need to be really mindful about the landscape materials that we picked, part of the IPM prevention part of things. So whether you're doing pest management inside or out, sanitation is IPM. Prevention is IPM, okay? IPM is also an excellent customer retention method, but that communication piece, if you're on the professional side of things, it's going to require a different type of pest control technician because that communication piece is a separate skill set. So I'm going to leave you here. I'm leaving 5 minutes at the end for us to answer some questions, but here's some resources that might be helpful to you. So this is one that we just put out about a year ago on landscaping methods to prevent pests from entering your home. So you can screenshot that, or I can give this to Tom a little bit later. Termite prevention and control. This one is quite lengthy, and it will give you an idea of all the termites that we have in the state of Florida. And then I have this on IPM of the tawny crazy ant, but I'm showing you this one because the process of IPM for ants is very similar. So this would help you with putting together a plan for ants as well. So Tom, I can't believe it. I got through all of those slides. So I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That you covered so much information, and there was great interactivity with the chat. So you answered a lot of the questions, but they're still coming through.
Okay.
Let's go with a couple of these. One that came in real early. What can you use to take care of ground hornets in a children's play area? I'm assuming some sort of ground dwelling wasp.
So when you say ground hornets in a play area, there's several species, right, that we could be talking about. If they're like yellow jackets, you want to make sure that the kids are not there, and you want a company that's going to come in who has experience in stinging insects. In general, what the company is going to do is they're going to come in and identify where the wasp's nest is during the day. And what I've seen some of these guys do is they'll come back at night and they have those, those auto repair lights. They're going to shine those lights. I think it's away. It's going to be away from where they're going to treat, because they use it as a diversion. They're going to come in with a very high quality bee suit, so they're not going to get stung, and they'll drench the mom. That's yellow jacket. That's worst case scenario. You don't want to do that one by yourself, because there's no way to tell how big that nest is underneath. So if you've come to the entomology department, you can see we have one that's about 5 feet, about my size, right? If it's just like a cicada killer, that's a grub problem. So there's grub in the turf, and they're going after something else in the turf. So species ID would be really helpful to know. Yeah.
Fantastic. I told you I'd come back and ask you this question about how to keep tiny ants out of a garden.
So the tiny ant, that's really hard too, because sometimes they may be helpful, those ants in a garden, but it depends what it is. Usually people are just worried about fire ants because they're stinging ants. And in that case, there are not a lot of products that are registered to put into a garden that you're going to harvest food from. So my recommendation in general is to put ant bait out in the path of the garden away, because most ants are going to forage, and they're going to forage quite intensively. But it's helpful to know what species it is so that you can pick the right bait to go with the ant that you're trying to control. You want to bait on a good day to have a picnic. So if it's between 70 and 90, it's good. Today's going to be hot. Yesterday was really hot, probably not so much, right? And then you want to bait before or after a rain. They need about 2 hours of foraging on that bait. Irrigation could be another issue. So I hope that's enough. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that ID piece is really important.
Yes.
And that's where extension can come in. And,
Yes.
there's the UF insect ID lab that, the county agents can send things to. So make sure that, to our audience out there, make sure you do get the correct ID. That's so important. Is it true that carpenter ants follow termites?
Follow termites.
In other words, follow the damage, I guess. Where if there's damage from subterranean termites, do we get carpenter ants coming through and living in that space?
So that's a really good question. I don't have a good answer for that one, because generally the Florida carpenter ant is going to be in damaged wood, and it's not something that the termites that we have would necessarily prefer. Subterranean termites. Now, I'm pausing because if you have different species, if you're in a different part of the US, they might, and I'm not thinking about drywood termites either right now. So it may be possible, because it's a lot of work to make a gallery, right? But the species that we have, I really haven't seen too much crossover between our Florida carpenter ant and termites.
Okay, awesome. Do foragers leave scent trails as ants do? And I'm not
Oh.
sure, I don't have any more information on that one.
Okay, so that's a really good point. So social insects in general, that is true. There will be a trail following pheromone for termites and for ants. Yes.
Okay, awesome. What do you recommend next to a house if not mulch?
So I'm okay with mulch if it's put down really thinly that allows the natural drying cycle. So what you don't want is come on to the University of Florida campus and go check out some of our buildings, because all we tend to do is pile up mulch. And that's probably not a good idea. Yeah, but mulch is okay. There's a purpose for mulch, right? But we just don't want to overdo it.
Um, is there a snail expert at UF that can help with snails damaging plants?
So Dr. Caponera was our snail expert, and he's unfortunately retired and had passed in the last year. So we have some information that we can share on snail control. And Tom, it's in EDIS. We have EDIS publications that John left, and they're all still good.
Okay. And you know, for the audience out there, if you search any topic and you want University of Florida publications, you can just put EDIS after it, or even IFAS.
Yep.
And you know, those publications will come out. Um, let's see, thoughts on tenting a home.
Oh, so um so tenting, so if we do fumigation, we generally do it for drywood termites in the state of Florida. We have the second largest market in the US. It is highly effective when done properly. So I don't know what else to say about it, but we have some really good fumigators in the state of Florida. We can
Okay.
also fumigate for bed bugs.
Very nice. You know, it's well, let's hope we don't ever get bed bugs. I don't have to deal with that. What about silverfish inside the home?
Silverfish, they come in because of starch. They will live on starch. So I would look for cardboard boxes. You want to protect your books too, because they'll eat the bindings off the books. So I don't know what else to say about that. They have deco, I think it's DEKKO packs that you can put in boxes and attic spaces. And there seems to be some pretty good results with that. So it's borate based product.
Okay.
Yep.
How far should a compost bin be located away from a house to consider it to be safe?
That's a really good question. So my compost bin is probably 30 feet, maybe more away from the house. But it's also about turning it right and proper compost management. So any kind of food that you leave out there, the rodents are going to have a really large range. So we just want to do compost management properly.
Claire asks a great question. We're having rodent problems chewing the wiring of our cars. And that's happening to our state vehicles here at East Campus. What do we do?
So I don't have a good solution for that, Claire, right now, because that came in earlier from some of our IFAS colleagues. Part of that is because we're using soy-based coverings for the wirings right now. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit of research on that, and I will get back with us IFAS on how to take care of that.
Awesome. One more question came in. Can cockroaches swim and enter through outdoor pipes?
Oh, so cockroaches can make it through water. It's the big palmetto bug type that we're talking about. So it's the Paraplanitas species. Um, More likely they're just going to follow the pipes in to, the outside of the pipes in. Yeah.
Right.
So, but if you're on septic, it can be harborage.
Okay. And I see one more. It says, would you recommend placing borax or diatomaceous earth inside the walls before you put up wallboards?
So diatomaceous earth for us in the state of Florida, probably not as effective because we're so humid. Um, The borax, I'm kind of 1/2 dozen another on that. Yeah, it depends on pest, right, that we're trying to take care of. Mhm.
Okay. Well, Faith, thank you so much for answering all these questions, giving us so much to think about. And yeah, there's a lot of issues that we can tackle just with proper design. I know one of our commenters earlier just said, we can tackle a lot of these problems just by designing better,
Yes.
both in the
Yes.
landscape and the home as well. So, just we need to be smart. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. I do want to remind the audience that our next webinar will be July 9th at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. That's going to be with Debbie Mola from Disney World, talking about success with bedding plants. So if you want your landscape to look like Disney, join us on July 9th to hear Debbie speak. Faith, thank you so much one more time. And everybody, thank you. Join us again and make sure to fill out your evaluation. And we'll see you next month.
Thank you all.